Hi, everyone. My name is Ann Fennell, and I'm the immediate past president of California Music Educators Association, and we are grateful for your time tonight and all these amazing folks that are here to present and share information. I do want to let you know that this first portion of the webinar, there will be opportunity for questions and answers. If you go to the More feature in Zoom, those three little dots in a circle, you can see the Q&A feature and you can post your questions there. We'll be using that actually throughout, but especially during this first section where we won't be stopping to address every single question. If you find that at the end, when we do answer some of these questions, that yours was not addressed and you would like to stay on, feel free to hang out with us and we will address your individual questions. So we are going to get started right away with our legislative process overview. The entire webinar today is really about the webinar process, the advocacy process and the landscape of advocacy. But we're going to focus the first half of this really on the process overview. And we're going to cover 5 points: the advocacy fundamentals, the legislature, the legislative session, how the process works, and how to work the process. And interestingly enough, we're going to do this across 3 states, really across Florida and Oklahoma primarily, though you will see California's information in there. And the reason we're doing that is because every state is so different, and we want to make sure that you're aware of that, and we'll give examples of that. During this time, you'll see Kathy Sands from Florida Music Educators Association and Robin Hilger from the American Choral Directors Association. Next slide, please. Simply put, advocacy in its simplest level really is speaking up or taking action to support, protect, or advance something that you truly believe in. And it can be everyday advocacy, or as our friend Tony Beatrice on this call says, quiet advocacy, those small conversations on the side, or it could be the larger advocacy picture where you truly are going to make a change in one of your laws or add a law to your state. And basically, if you're going to make an advocacy statement, there's 3 points. You state the need or the concern because you're educating and raising awareness. You support with the data and stories, and then you provide possible solutions. Those are really the key 3 points. So keep those in mind as you start to see across the board the different processes in the overview from different states. And I'm going to welcome onto the screen Kathy Sands from Florida Music Educators. Kathy?
Hi there. It's good to see that everybody's here to listen to our webinar this evening. So as you look at it, what Ann mentioned was that the different states are different. I mean, all of our states have nuances. There's some similarities, but there's many nuances. So when you look across these states, you'll see Florida. We have 2 chambers. We have the Florida Senate, and that's known as the upper house, with 40 members in the Senate, and they have 4-year terms. The Florida House of Representatives, known as the lower house, has 120 members and 2-year terms. And that's very similar to Oklahoma. When you look at Oklahoma, you can see they have 48 members in the Senate and 101 members in the House of Representatives. In California, 40 members and in the Senate, and then 80 members in the House. So you see the differences between these 3 states. On to Robin.
That's it. Well, hello, everyone. It's great to see you. Part of tonight, we'll email the slide deck to everyone, so don't feel like you need to take crazy notes. We've also embedded links that you'll be able to follow, so we don't want you worrying about having to keep track. Part of the reason why we chose to sort of display 3 states was that if we look from the East Coast to the West Coast and then in the middle of the country, it again shows you how important it is that you really need to know what's happening in your place. If you're talking to somebody in another state and they're telling you something is going on, you almost can guarantee that your state is going to be different in how it operates. So all of the state legislatures, operate in what's called sessions. And this is something that's important to track because it tells you how the legislative business is going to happen in your state. So you'll notice that all of our states that we're displaying are on a 2-year session, but you will notice how different the session cycles are. And that is one of the key places for advocacy because you've got to get your advocacy effort on cycle with your legislature. So in Oklahoma, we're actually, session begins, it is in our Constitution, the first Monday of February, period. That is when the session starts in Oklahoma. So if you try to start something after that point, you are too late. In Oklahoma, the session has started. They have already started assigning bills even on that first day. Notice in Florida and in California, you're looking at like January cycles. Things happen in March. People take big breaks. And so getting your calendar put together is really, really important. All the legislatures have calendars that they publish. We have put California, Florida, and Oklahoma here. And hopefully, if I launch this, you're going to be able to see it. Do you see the Oklahoma Senate calendar? In Oklahoma, interestingly enough, the Senate calendar is really good, and the House side calendar is not good at all for a resource. So even within our own legislature, it's very difficult to find out what's going on. But the calendar already will tell you, for us, bill request deadlines, when was the information due to the analysts, when are things happening, so you can see starting way back here in December, things were already happening here in Oklahoma. The session cycle runs very regularly, and so once you understand what's happening in your state, you really can't predict what part of the process that you're in. Additionally, under the calendar, you often find the meetings, the journals, the general order. So if you're specifically tracking, you need to know when the Education Committee is meeting in the Senate. Those meeting dates, the room numbers, the agendas all get posted publicly for you as a citizen. And so starting to learn how to navigate all of the tools in your state are really important to help you keep on track. And then, how does this work? So here comes the first day. The first thing that happens is there are elections and caucuses within the parties. So whoever the majority party is, they are going to name their leadership within the House and the Senate. They're going to caucus to select all of the other chairs that are happening across all of the committees. And on the first day, the Speaker and the President Pro Tem are elected. From there, those folks start appointing floor leaders on that first day. This is the person that is going to control the agenda. And then all the committee heads are appointed. And within about 2 days, at least here, all of the bills get assigned into a committee. So within that first week of work in Oklahoma, you already know who your leaders are. You know what committee your bill has been assigned to, and they probably have already published the schedule. So it can seem mysterious sometimes. You're like, what is going on Thursday in the 5th week of the session? It can seem mysterious, but it's not actually mysterious. It happens on a very specific cycle that you can predict. The committees are really critical gatekeepers because your bill initially goes from the floor to a committee assignment. And if it does not come out of committee, it is dead. The end, you're done for all the rest of the session. That's the first barrier, and the committee assignment is going to be critical. So knowing who your committee chair is and having a relationship with them is important because all the committee members are the ones that are going to advance your bill back onto the floor to keep it moving. So those committee chairs have discretion on what they hear and what they don't. So the Speaker may say, here's all the bills that are assigned to your committee, and then the committee chair is going to say, yeah, well, we're going to hear 10 of those and not the other 50. So you also have to continue your advocacy at that level. The leadership appointments are really powerful. These people are the gatekeepers, including the floor leader who is keeping the business going in the organization. So you want to build relationships early, and you don't want to disappear even if your bill dies, because that's what happens. People show up to the first meeting, they find out their bill's not going to go through, and then they stop showing up. And if you can continue to remain engaged, even if your bill is not advancing, you are showing them that you care about the entirety of the process, and it helps you build relationships, even if maybe this year your specific bill is not going to be championed. Kathy?
So as you look at this, when we look at overall and how bills are actually filed and become law, so a legislator, a senator, a group of people suggest certain legislation that they would like to see passed during the session. So the senator files the bill, and the president of the Senate assigned it to committees. And that's what Robin was talking about how important these people are. If a representative files a bill, the Speaker of the House is the one. Now, we already know, because we do have a lobbyist, we already know who the designated Speaker of the House is and who the designated President of the Senate is for about 4 or 5 years out. We already know that because they come through with a cohort and somebody rises to the top. So we know who those people are, and so we're already talking to them about our issues, and in music education. So once it passes favorably by each committee, this is the other thing. You watch how many committees they assign it to. If they assign it to 5, 6 committees, it'll never get through the legislative process. So if there's 3 committees, it's pretty tight, but they could do it. So that's key on those on the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House. So once it passes favorably by each of the committees, it is sent to the full chamber for a vote. Then the bill becomes law after being passed by a majority vote in both the House and the Senate. And at that point, the bill is then sent to the governor for signature. Now, looking at these two flow charts, Florida has a flow chart. I would venture to guess that most of your states have a flow chart. When looking at these two, you will see that both of them say that the bill is introduced. So, for instance, when we're looking at California, the bill is introduced in the Senate, and then it goes to committee hearings, and then it goes to the floor for the whole chamber. Then it goes across the aisle or across the chamber to go through committee hearings, floor action, and then bill goes to the governor. Well, what really typically happens in most of these is that it passes on the floor in either the House or Senate, then it's sent to the chamber and repeats the process. In reality, that doesn't happen. Typically, what happens is bills are being considered by both the chambers simultaneously. Then lobbyists will then work with both bill sponsors to agree on the language, because once both bills they have to be identical to be passed in both chambers before they can go to the governor. So that's critical, and that's a big piece for us to continue with, when we have our lobbyists go, to make sure that the language gets straightened out for both of them. Now, they can go to a committee or a caucus to talk about it and make the changes, but it has to be, again, has to be identical. So then the governor has the option. He has an option to sign the bill, not to sign the bill, or to veto the bill. And if he signs the bill, it becomes law. If the governor does not sign the bill, it becomes effective in Florida on the 60th day after adjournment through sine die. So he didn't sign it, but if nothing else happens to it, then it becomes law. Then if the governor chooses to veto the bill, which does happen, it does not become law unless each chamber has a 2/3 vote to override the veto. So a veto can be overridden, but it's very difficult to do because it has to be overridden in both the House and the Senate.
Kathy, I'm sure it's this way in Florida as it is in Oklahoma, which is how the bills are moving is scheduled. So in Oklahoma, the
Yes.
chamber of origin, that's what we would call it, where your bill is first, the committees have 4 weeks. And at the end of the 4th week, if your bill is not out of committee, you are done. And then by the end of week 6, it has to come off the chamber of origin and start moving across by the end of week 6. So again, this is about the process, because if you're wondering, how long is this going to take? Or am I going to wait forever on this bill? When am I going to hear something? At least in Oklahoma, if by the end of the 6th week you have come out of committee and you've gone into the floor, if you do not come off the floor at the end of the 6th week, you know that you are done. So understanding the calendar of that is really important. Is Florida that way too, where it runs very
Yeah, and the thing is, when I was saying that the bills are going through the through the Senate and the House at the same time simultaneously, is because there's only 60 days in the session, and it has to get through all of those committees. So we have to get them started in both the House and the Senate. So when we set up a bill that we want, some legislation that we want passed, we make sure we have immediately a House sponsor and a Senate sponsor to get that, and then they have to. Oftentimes, we also talk to either the senator, the sponsor, or the House sponsor, for them to tell us who they would like to see be the sponsor in the other chamber. Because if they work well together, then things get passed. So.
And you can also check on your state's websites for legislation tracker. We have a ledge tracker, and you can put numbers in and the title of the information that you want, and it'll tell you what's happening with it, where it is, if it's sitting, if it's passing, if it's been edited, whatnot. So check at your state level to find out where your ledge tracker is, and you can get automatic email responses to your email box to see where things are falling.
Well, and I think that's a future webinar, which is how to use the legislative tracker and read all the bill changes. I think that is coming because being able to do that is too much for this one webinar today.
Yeah.
So now that you know a little bit about the process, you have to work the process. So we've talked about these really important people, the speaker and the pro tem, your committee chair, the members, the floor leader, your chamber members, and the governor. Kathy referred to this earlier, which is once a bill gets here in Oklahoma to the governor, they can do the same thing. Sign it, it will become law. Veto it, it will go back for the potential override, which, by the way, we in Oklahoma in the last cycle, the legislature overrode at least 6 vetoes of the governor here. It was a very, governor was veto happy here, and the legislature was not having it. So it was pretty interesting to watch. If the governor leaves it lay, doesn't touch it, in Oklahoma, in 5 days, so Kathy referred to a 60-day window. Ours is a 5-day window here. It will become law. This is a game of numbers because the end of our session is defined as the last Friday in May, Sine Die. So sometimes the governor will just let things sit, and if your bill is coming off of the vote on Monday and you don't have a signature before session ends, it doesn't matter. Your bill is done. It has to pass that 5-day window while in session. So particularly at the end, you want your bill passed early and for it to move on. Here in Oklahoma, you say, why would a governor do that? Why would they not sign it knowing that something is going to happen? Because when a governor puts their signature on it, it's an endorsement. So maybe they want it to happen, but they don't want to sign for it. That's what that means. So that is why that piece is in play. Anne?
Thanks, Robin. Hey, Robin, actually, could you go back one slide? Because one point I want to mention is that when you're doing work at the state level, and we had to do this with California Music Educators Association, you have to write letters to all those folks. It's not just like one letter to one person. You are finding the members, the committee chairs, the floor leader, the chamber members. You're finding all of those folks, the speaker. You are getting their correct titles. You are addressing an individual letter to each of those folks, and you're finding the portal and where you actually are going to mail that, or rather email that. So that's really important. So you keep these letters that you continually move forward to all of those folks to stay present to them. Okay, next slide. Thanks, Robin. So, and that is because we need to stay present so that the legislators see us, because when they have any doubt at all, they're going to vote no. Now, these are not formal rules that you see on this slide deck. These really are just the way that we've experienced it, and that advocates have experienced what happens with the laws, the bills that come forward. When you look at this, just know that if there's any doubt, they're going to vote no. So the more information you've given them, the more that you've stated your case, and not with length. It's not like a 3 or 4 page letter. It's succinct, but it's information that they need and the why. it's succinct, and it's clear, you're making the case for yes. And you have to assume they might vote no at any point. So you're trying to continually convince them. So you stay present to them because they will act differently if they are being watched or if they know they're not being watched. I know when in California, when we had work to do in the last couple of years, we made sure we had someone present at meetings and they would work the room and say, hello, good to see you. We're from California Music Educators Association. Please look at this issue. We have concerns. We are present. We knew that our letters were always there, and we had someone representing us and the arts educators. Actually, it was across all the 4 arts orgs that we did this. So that presence is really important because, again, if they're being watched to see what's happening at our level, they're going to vote and think twice. Plus, they have your information. And if you have to hand carry a letter of a hard copy into them, that's worth it as well, maybe as a reminder. And just so you know, as Kathy and as Robin has said, that if it's left unattended, it will die. So your persistence will pay off the entire time. The goal is for you to be present, not obnoxious, but to be present and to stay on top of what you need and the understanding the bigger why and understanding what the case is for that yes. So you're going to raise awareness by your letters, by reaching out, by taking action, and by changing that policy. But let me just say this. In California, for all the big issues that we've taken on at the state level, we don't do it alone as music educators. We did it with the dance educators, we did it with theater educators, and we did the arts educators. So they saw us coming in all together as arts educators. That was really important for our message because we didn't want to stand separate from them. We are all part of an arts education in the public school system, and it was really important they saw us together. So anytime you can come together with other folks, that's very valuable for your work. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide is really kind of just a review of what we've been talking about and how you can start your advocacy journey. We know it can be the phone calls, the single phone calls, the quiet advocacy on the side, reaching out to key people that might make your voice louder. We know it could be your voice in letters, your organization's voice in letters, but most importantly, you got to master that calendar. And gosh, I see that, we put build relationships early as number 2. I kind of would say that that's number 1, y'all, because if we don't have relationships with these people, it doesn't matter what the calendar is. They don't know who you are. So I would say build relationships. Even if everything's going well right now, introduce yourself to the state legislature. Write letters on behalf of the organization. I want to say thank you for XYZ. Just be present for them so they see who you are. We make a point also when our organization leadership changes, we reintroduce ourselves to the state with our new executive board so that they know who we are. So relationships first, then always master that calendar because even if you want to make a change and if it's off calendar, it doesn't matter, nothing's going to happen. So think about the calendar, continually stay engaged. You will probably write the same letter 20, 30 times with different names to different people. But you keep those letters open. I'm going to encourage you to open an open file with those that you can copy and paste that information with different headers to other folks and then be visible. It might be an email. It might be someone that you know that lives close to the Capitol that can walk in, that can give hard copies of letters, stop by and say hello on a lunchtime, but make sure that you are continuing the work over time. And if you can build those relationships first, when issues really come to the front and you've got to fight for them, they're going to know who you are. And your why is going to be half answered for them already. Thanks.
So that is about the process. And now we're going to ask some of our friends who are engaged in this work all the time at the grassroots level to share their experiences with us. As we go into the interview portion, the Q&A is still open and is being monitored. So we encourage you, if you've got questions about what you just heard or as the interviews are progressing, to ask them. Several questions will be addressed at the end of the webinar. And as Ann said, if you want to hang around at the end and visit with us, we are happy to stay. So first up is going to be Mark Despotakis and Deja Brown. Mark is on the call. I'm going to fire up the video and we should be good to go. Yes.
Well, hello, everybody. I am Mark Despotakis. I am the Director of Public and Government Affairs at PMEA, the Pennsylvania Music Educators Association. I'm glad to be here with you tonight, where we're talking a lot about legislative policy as it relates to music and arts education. And we thought the best place to go for that is Arts Education Partnership. If you haven't heard of them, pay attention here in the next 10 minutes or so, as you're going to hear about some of the work that they do. And I'm delighted to bring in Deja Brown, who is the policy analyst at Arts Education Partnership. Deja, thanks for being with us.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me, Mark. Super glad to be joining, although virtually. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, you know, you guys are the experts in all the policy. You do, as your title denotes, the analysis of it. So we're going to dive into some of those things with you, kind of at a 30,000 foot level on some of this here in the next few minutes. So part of what AEP does, and certainly part of what your work is analyzing the trends and what's going on in the arts education policy space. So my first question for you is, as we look at generally arts education, what are the things that you're seeing policy-wise?
Yeah. Arts education is in a very unique position right now. We have a lot going on, a lot to cover. I've shared before publicly, but AEP, we currently track legislation in 4 different areas. We track arts ed legislation as it relates to assessments, graduation requirements, teacher certification, and curriculum and standards. And so as I've been tracking this year, I've been seeing that there's not too much motion, there's not too much going on in those specific areas this year, but I anticipate us seeing a little bit more motion going on going into 2026. However, this year I've been seeing a lot of states, a handful of states that are passing or looking to pass resolutions to recognize the significance of arts education in some capacity. So, for example, in Rhode Island, they've passed they've passed legislation, a resolution to acknowledge Arts Day, and then in Tennessee, they've passed a similar resolution to recognize arts education and its impact as Arts and Education Week in Tennessee. So I've seen some resolutions like these come through in other states exploring resolutions that have not yet been enacted. I'm also seeing, and this has been the case over the last couple years, especially as I've been working on the ArtScan resource, where we capture 14 different policy areas across all 50 states and the Department of Defense Education Activity and DC. But I'm seeing a trend in states exploring or starting conversations around integrating arts education in career and technical education. We see a couple of these examples within our ArtScan resource in states that are already doing this as alternative pathways. But I'm starting to see and anticipate that we'll see more of this going into the 2026 legislative year. So, and I think that it's in part because there is a profound emphasis on preparing young people for the workforce at this moment and ensuring that they're equipped with the technical skills that they need to be successful in the workforce. And I'm also, I think that it's in part that, but also I think it's coming out of advocacy efforts to include the arts as a legitimate learning pathway to a bucket of diverse career paths. And I think artistic skills like critical thinking and creativity and collaboration, they are all transferable and highly sought after across industries. So I'm seeing a lot of discourse around arts integration in career and technical education. And also, of course, it's no secret that there's gaps that exist in current data collection and reporting as it relates to arts education at the national level, but also at the state level and getting down to district as well. And this has prompted a lot more discourse around this specific topic, collecting data and reporting on it. And I think, and I'm keeping my eyes on a piece of legislation right now in New York. They've introduced a piece of legislation that would direct the Commissioner of Education to require public schools to report on compliance with arts ed instructional requirements. So I'm seeing some pieces of legislation as it relates to data collection and reporting come through. But that is a big area where I'm anticipating going into 2026 that there'll be a lot more conversations around how we're collecting data on arts programs at the school, both in school and out of school, and reporting on that impact of arts ed programs on young people.
Yeah, and we could probably do a webinar on each of those topics.
Yeah.
And we'll probably break down some of those going forward. But take a minute or two now, if you would, and let's dive just a little bit deeper, and let's talk about what you're seeing as far as policy specific to music education.
Yeah, for sure. As it relates to music education specifically, we're seeing simplifying states that are considering or taking the step to simplify and consolidate music standards. I think this is a part of moving to align with the current national standards and how other arts disciplines are laid out as well. And consolidating standards could allow for new opportunities to build out curriculum and allow for consistency across states. So we are seeing this happen. Wisconsin is a great state example that are moving to consolidate their music requirements, organizing learning by grade bands. Also, for specific to music education, obviously, with AI coming, with AI up and coming and impacting arts education across disciplines, specific for music education, our partners over at the National Association for Music Education, they've released a lot of great resources around this topic, specifically around AI, and states are thinking about the role and the influence of AI specifically, and the utilization of AI amongst not only educators, but students as well. And then we are actually seeing that there are great impacts of tariffs on instruments, on musical instruments, and current tariffs are on imported musical instruments are increasing the cost for consumers. Obviously, and higher cost of instruments could decrease the demand for them, but increase the pressure amongst manufacturers to make up for those losses. And so essentially, it seems to be almost a lose-lose situation when these tariffs are hitting the creative sector very hard. And we anticipate that there could be some detrimental impacts on students and schools' access to instruments as well.
Yeah, and so obviously that for sure that piece plays into school budgets and those concerns. So let's talk about concerns then. As you're analyzing this, run us through quickly just some of the concerns that you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, there's great concern for funding for arts education, music education, especially. The lack of clarity around federal funds and how schools and programs and organizations are going to sustain their current programs through this uncertainty. We're waiting to see how the budget, the 2026 fiscal year budget, how it plays out amongst the Senate and the House. But as we see, those decisions being made at the federal level, we anticipate it trickling down to the state level and potentially impacting. And we've already seen these impacts on the distribution of funds to school districts for arts education specifically. So there's great concern around funding and overall access for arts education right now, and it potentially causing even greater disproportionate impacts on equity, and specifically on certain demographics, typically lower income students and students of color.
All right, so moving on from some concerns, let's look at what people can do to be proactive. You've given us a whole variety of issues, good and bad, but we always want to stay proactive and be advocates. So talk to us a little bit about, from your perch, what makes sense there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways that we can be proactive right now. I think for current programs that exist both in and outside of school, I think it's important for our educators, teaching artists, those administrators to really think about early on about the information that can be collected from young people that are participating in the programs, so that when it comes time to look for funds and try to secure funds, we can make solid cases for the impact of these programs on young people, and those positive impacts that we're seeing. I also think that building relationships with those school and district leaders, the decision makers in a lot of this, when we're looking at school to school and how arts education, the accessibility of arts education from school to school, really building those relationships with the decision makers of those schools and advocating for the arts and being vocal about the arts programs within your schools, within your communities, is essential. I also believe that it's important to familiarize yourself with the people and organizations leading advocacy work within your states. It's imperative that we know who our champions are in our states, who can navigate the political landscape in a way that most people do not know how to or cannot. So familiarizing yourself and getting connected to those champions in your state and the organizations that are doing the advocacy work and participating in that way is a way to be proactive during this time as well, in advocating for arts education access.
And, just to kind of put a cap on that, one of the things you talked about is the data. One of the things that I learned many years ago in this work is data drives policy.
Yes.
So that's so key to be collecting that information. I will also tell people to, if you don't know anything about AEP, you should check out aep-arts.org and all of the amazing work that they do there. Deja, thanks for being with us today and just kind of giving us a brief overview of what's going on across the country. We appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mark, for having me.
Absolutely. And I will now toss it back to all of you at the webinar.
Mark, thank you so much for that. So much wonderful information and food for thought. And then that takes me to the question that Jonathan Rappaport had put in the Q&A, suggesting a fifth area of tracking for AEP that is funding levels for arts education. That it would be fantastic. And depending on the state, like California, we get separate funding, so we know for sure exactly what that is, even by school, and New Mexico as well. And hopefully Massachusetts, you'll learn more coming up here soon. Depending on the state, it may or may not be possible to break it down. I would love to pull that apart more with these brilliant folks on this call in our next couple of meetings, and maybe bring that even forward to AEP. Robin?
So we are moving on to our fabulous group of next speakers. We would like to welcome Jasmine A. Sutton and Tony Beatrice for the next conversation. Take it away, Jasmine A.
Hi, everyone. I have the pleasure of presenting with Tony a little bit about an inspiring bill that will positively impact arts education in Massachusetts. This bill is called the Lowell Mason Arts Equity Act. I'm going to put it in the chat so you can have access to that. And it was introduced earlier this year, and Tony and I are going to just share a little bit about it All right, Tony, let's get started. So, can you share a little bit about what the Lowell Mason Act is and how it will impact arts education?
Sure. So it's first of all, it's named after Lowell Mason, who began public school music education right here where I'm from in Boston, Massachusetts in 1837. So the legislation would guarantee new funding for arts education in every public school across Massachusetts. It would provide a 1% increase to our foundational budget. So there's a whole formula with an equity mindset that the state puts together for every school district across the state. So it would be a 1% increase using Chapter 70 funds, and Chapter 70 is a bulk of money that comes from the state as opposed from local tax funding. And so within that, we would follow the same frameworks as California with their Prop 28 bill that passed recently, with 80% of the funding reserved for new certified fine and performing arts educators, and the remaining 20% would support supplies, equipment, professional development, tutoring, etc. And then also based on our conversations with folks in California, especially like Ann Fennell, who's on this call, it was important too that we had language in the bill about adding positions within our State Department of Education. So that way there would be folks who would have some or provide accountability for school districts to report the data out each year on how the funding is being used. And the whole point of all of this is to kind of circumvent a law that was passed in 1980 in Massachusetts called Prop 2.5, which limited local property tax growth and constrained how much revenue that cities and towns could raise each year. So over time, these limits led to a decrease in visual and performing arts educators throughout the state. This past year alone, there were around 52 municipalities that tried to do a vote to go over the 2.5% threshold. In 29 of those communities, the vote failed. So again, the Lowell Mason Act is designed to reverse this longstanding trend, restore equitable arts education access statewide.
Okay, so you got the idea for the Lowell Mason Act, and we've heard several times on this call already tonight about the importance of building relationships. Who did you build relationships with to make this bill possible?
Sure. So we began leveraging the partnerships that already existed with MMEA, and in particular with an organization called Arts Learning, which Jonathan Rappaport, he's on this meeting right now, he helps lead that. And that group in particular is a collective impact. It's its own nonprofit, but where MMEA is sort of a member of that, as are the other arts education organizations in the state. And during the pandemic, we were one of the last states in the country that allowed singing and playing instruments. So we had to do a lot of advocating. And at one point towards the end of the pandemic, they were allowing wrestling even, but not singing. And so this group was really fired up and did a huge campaign, a lot of social media work and getting the word out. And so after that was done, the question was like, what's next, right? And arts education funding became our new venture. And so from there, Arts Learning has been leading this effort and bringing together the cohorts throughout the state of the other arts ed organization. And then additionally talking about legislators and getting them involved. So Arts Learning every year does an award ceremony and they give out awards to legislators who advocate and have been great supporters of arts education. And so just thinking about how can we build that Rolodex of legislators that we can count on later on. We leaned on NAFME, in particular, Jasmine A. You have helped us out greatly, volunteer lawyers, our sponsored legislators staff for helping writing the bill. And that bill has gone through a bunch of iterations for language changes. And additionally, we brought in interns. So part of this is figuring out how much money would it take to make us feel whole, and figuring out what percentage we wanted to increase in the foundational budget, what seemed like that right amount. And so we got interns from Endicott College and from UMass Amherst, and they came to our meetings and they listened to what we were asking for and made all these great spreadsheets and tinkered around doing the numbers of what it would cost and what it might look like for a suburban and urban and a regional school district. And then also building friends with music educators who are now school superintendents and having meetings with them to show them drafts of the bill, show them some of the calculations and get their feedback. That's been also very important. And then leading on our visual and performing arts educators across the state. And MMEA has also built through our advocacy chair, Allison Rotman, a parent booster group that's been meeting all the parent booster groups throughout the state together on Zoom, and they use the Band app as well. So advocating that way. So yeah, and I think it's important too to know that we've been using the NAFME voter tool in particular for emailing. Right now, the bill is in. We'll talk about this in a minute, but it's we've been using it to email legislators and also now call legislators as well.
Yeah, that parent group is a fantastic group of dedicated folks who are just an example of how we spread advocacy beyond just the teachers and administration. So where does the bill stand right now?
Yeah, so the bill is currently sitting with the Joint Committee of Education. We just had our first hearing with them a couple of months ago, and we're advocating for it to be moved out of the Joint Committee in advance to the next step, and along with trying to get more co-sponsors as well. We just learned that the state this summer changed the rules, but nobody knows if the rules are actually going to be enacted. And so we're just waiting to see what happens next. We were told that all joint committees have to make a decision by a certain point, which is sort of like a new thing. It can't just sit there forever, but it does seem like it's been sitting. And so we're just waiting and seeing what happens next. It's a very interesting change, first change in years.
And I checked earlier this week, and I just want to report that you have an additional co-sponsor on the Senate and on the rep side, so your House side. So it's working. The communication lines are working, so congratulations on that. So can you talk to us about any final thoughts on this whole process of coming up with the idea, figuring out who you talk to? What are some final thoughts about this process?
Yeah, I think, well, first I'll say this. It's sort of like right now in the state of pre-K through 12 arts education, right? If you're not proposing a bill, it seems like there's 5 bills working against you. As was brought up earlier, and it's happening right now in the state of Massachusetts, the ballot just went through last year, getting rid of a state test that could tell if a student would graduate or not. And so the governor put a council together to create new graduation requirements. Well, those recommendations came out this week. And in it are interesting things like potentially a mandatory full semester financial literacy course, increased career and technical education courses, more dual enrollment courses, right? And not that much language about the arts. And so though we're advocating for this arts education bill specific to funding, it also lends itself, I feel like we're also advocating with all these other things that are happening at the same time. And it's less reactive because these conversations have already begun way before these other discussions about the graduation requirements. So I think that's very helpful. And then also trying to find some money. So we were very lucky. We just got a funder, a local foundation, to give us, I think it was around $30,000. And so we're going to use that to bring on a project manager and to do some social media work and some consulting. And, right now I'm also seeing a shift on social media. I see more folks using LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is like the new Facebook and Twitter and Instagram combined. So I think that's also a very interesting space, a new space for advocacy. So yeah. And then also, I just want to say too, like our retired music educators are ready to help, right? And they want to be civically engaged. They want to help your organization. They want to help the field. And it's really hard for us who are working like full-time during the day to be advocating and meeting with legislators and meeting with constituents. And so building that capacity as well within your group is vitally important. We've definitely learned that in Massachusetts.
Awesome. Well, I will wrap this up by saying I remember when you came to me and said, hey, we kind of want to do something what California is doing. And you talked with Anne and, Allison and all of the leadership in Massachusetts and Art Learning and the coalition, and to see this bill being introduced and you guys are doing the work to make it happen. So congratulations. Thanks for chatting with us for a little bit, and I'll turn it back over to our fabulous MC for the night. Robin,
Yeah.
thanks.
Thanks, Jasmine. Thanks, Tony. It's really nice to hear some good news about things working and to really hear about your partnership, but also I think something that Jasmine just spoke to, which was you wanted to do something, you reached out to Anne, now you're working across states. There's lots of lessons to be learned and friendships to be made. So we hope that everybody on this call tonight will continue to join us and reach out to the Music is Education Coalition members, and we are all here to help you. But thank you, Jasmine and Tony. For our moderators, I don't know if there were any questions that were in the Q&A, or are we clear?
We
We
are
may be
clear.
clear to go.
Yeah.
Okay,
You
so
know,
with that,
I just want to add what a beautiful slide that is. Go back one more, Robin. That slide, that is a testament to the relationships he's built. And there's another in-depth webinar on his process or their process with Massachusetts through ASTA coming up here soon. And Tony really breaks it down. And I think it's worth the listen to it because I think if anything, it's like a lesson and model of capacity building. Tony's just amazing. And I'm so glad that you all learned from what needed to happen in California, where we missed things, and you all get to make it right. So crossing my fingers. I also want to say we learned last week that, at the last minute, he had put into his ledge tracker, where is this? He found out. Tony, you want to really quickly explain what happened? You found out this was coming to a hearing really quickly, and what did you have to do?
Oh yeah, so it was during the summer. Yeah, so we, I had this feeling that something was up because it just was sitting for like months, almost 6 months. We hadn't heard anything, and then we looked it up, and sure enough, the hearing was like the next week, and so we had to get everyone up and ready to go ready for the hearing, and ask for more co-sponsors, get the voter tool up with NAFME and Jasmine A. Like it was like only a week's notice. It was just crazy, and so. And something else to bring up as well that I talk about in the ASTA recording is that when you're building the coalition with all these folks here, it's important to know like this is a multi-year process, and oftentimes you're working with like the president of the organization, and those folks are only there for a certain amount of time, and so it's also important to engage those president-elects in that process as well.
That's great. So they handed off from Bridget. Yeah. And so you were able to spin on a dime because of all the relationships you built over time. And this will carry on in perpetuity because now these relationships are built for the strength of arts education. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Jasmine and Tony. Okay, our next slide is talking about upcoming events and action items. We have a couple of surveys we would like you to take. They have deadlines, and it's going to help us understand what your needs are. The first one's a state survey that's going to help us see what is up and coming and burning issues. Federal fund survey with NAFME and NAM is out, and we need information on that. And can we also look at this registration for our next webinar? Because it is January 6th. We're turning it around fast. And we're going to show Bob Morrison will be sharing the results of the state survey at that time. You can register via that QR code now. We will put this PDF out to all registered members of this webinar. And also, I think that we could probably, maybe someone throw that link of the registration in the chat as well. Thank you
Bob's
so
got the
much.
survey coming.
Oh,
It's
way
all
to go,
coming in the
Bob.
chat.
Way to go. Thank you. And, check out musiciseducation.org. We are a coalition of people that come together in supporting music education and advocating for it. And it's organizations that are here because we're passionate about music and we want to ensure that generations to come have music and without any inhibitions or without any borders or without any walls. So we want to thank you for that. And now if we look at our last slide, it is simply a thank you to all these incredible people. First and foremost, James Weber, thank you, Music for All, for setting up the webinar and letting us use this platform because we do not have one as a single coalition. And we're thankful for that. And all these people that came forward today to make this webinar happen and to educate us in our work. We want to thank you. If you would like to stay a little bit longer for individual questions, please do so. Otherwise, go out and enjoy that full moon. And cheers to a beautiful holiday and to music education.
Thanks, everybody. We can't wait to see you in January.